Hey there, interwebs! I hope you're all doing well. I'm here with my little Cation here because I want to make a video talking about the recent cancellation of Star Trek Lower Decks and my feelings on it and why I am deeply upset and why I want to do a call to action to try to save the show. But let's talk about it a little bit. Do you want down, little buddy? You wanna go deal with some patients? Yeah, he wants to go be a doctor. You'll be your best self, bud. All right, now that this house's senior officer is out of here, let's actually talk about Star Trek Lower Decks. So for those of you who don't know, Star Trek Lower Decks, which is yet to premiere its 5th season, has recently gotten canceled. It was announced alongside the news that Star Trek Strange New Worlds has been renewed for its 4th season, which has still yet to air its 3rd season. And this cancellation of Lower Decks is deeply concerning for a few different reasons. The first is that it is one of the latest in a string of recent cancellations for the Star Trek franchise. As I am filming this right now, Star Trek Discovery is undergoing its 5th and final season, a season that it didn't know was going to be its final season until after they had finished filming most of it, and then they had to refilm an ending to be able to cap off the series overall. We also had Star Trek Prodigy recently surprisingly getting canceled while it was still in the middle of working on Season 2, with there potentially being no release for Season 2 given that it wasn't going to be allowed on Paramount Plus anymore. Now, thankfully, the creators, the Hagman brothers of Star Trek Prodigy, were able to use their connections at Netflix, given that they had made other shows for that, the wonderful Trollhunter series, if you have not watched that, to be able to get that show over there, and it seems like we'll be getting a Season 2 there, and there might even be potential for that show to continue if it does well on Netflix, given that Prodigy is also technically a Nickelodeon production, not necessarily a Paramount Plus one. Though, to be fair, Nickelodeon is dealing with its own problems as well. And speaking on that, the other reason why these rash of cancellations around Star Trek are kind of concerning is because if you actually look out at the streaming landscape right now, Paramount Plus is the one in the, well, not the worst position, but one of the ones in the worst positions. There's been a lot of stories about how basically Paramount Plus is costing Paramount a lot of money, and actually there's been a lot of discussion around Paramount and CBS potentially being sold to a different owner. Right now, I think the forerunner is Skydance Studios. And honestly, there is a part of me that is somewhat interested to see Star Trek being given over to a different company at this point, given how Paramount has been fairly good with Star Trek overall these past few years, but has just been a very mismanaged production generally with the entire company. So maybe new owners could do better, but then there are also some owners that would take it over that would also just use Star Trek as an IP content farm, even more so than it is already been used over the years and decades. And then the other thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way around all of this is that, I look out at the Star Trek shows that have been canceled, Discovery, Lower Decks, Prodigy, and they are all Star Trek shows that have a black lead or a co-lead or a black-coded alien character in the case of Star Trek Prodigy. Basically, these are all Star Trek shows that have minority lead cast members. And again, I love my Captain Pike. He is wonderful, and certainly there has been diversity within Strange New Worlds overall, but it just really frustrates me that the one show that is seemingly to be able to continue in this era right now is the one that is a nostalgia show, is a one that is got a, this like stereotypical white dude as a captain. Again, no shade at the stereotypical white dudes, but it's like Star Trek is a show that should be pushing diversity boundaries, not regressing them. And again, that's no shade of my straight white dudes. I know some people on here will throw that into the woke agenda nonsense sort of thing, but it's just like, it is time, and Star Trek of all franchises needs to be pushing that forward, not regressing it. And right now it seems like it is regressing it. And I don't really blame the Star Trek franchise necessarily. It had this plethora of stuff that is just really the Paramount Studios being the ones that are choosing these, making these decisions. Now, I am probably next week or in a couple weeks going to be doing a video on like the state of Star Trek and sort of like maybe even have some fun being like what I would do if I was like the Alex Kurtzman of Star Trek. That could be a fun time. But bring it back to Lower Decks right now. Lower Decks, as you all know, on a personal level, is my favorite modern Star Trek show, and frankly, probably my favorite Star Trek show behind Deep Space Nine, just because of the love and heart and joy and just the specific weird, adorable love of Star Trek that mirrors my own that is found within it. And it's why Tendi is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Trek, right besides Dax, and why I'm even considering getting a Tendi tattoo, because these are just characters that speak so much to me and mean so much to me. And I am someone who definitely believes that all stories should have endings. I am frustrated when we see stories go on forever and ever and ever. And while certain franchises like Star Trek, I think, can tell numerous stories for decades within their universes, I do think stories within those universes should conclude and not just endlessly go. I mean, look at Star Trek Picard Season 3 for kind of my major problems with stories that just keep recycling over time. But that being said, it is very clear that Lower Decks still has a little bit more story to tell. And frankly, I believe that Lower Decks deserves to have 7 seasons, just like all of the Next Generation Star Trek shows, Next Generation era Star Trek shows that Lower Decks is emulating. I mean, look at Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. They all had 7 seasons, and with Lower Decks being a send-up of those shows, it deserves 7 seasons as well. And even potentially 4 movies with only one of them being pretty decent. Yeah. Oh man, is that going to be the spiciest take of this video? Anywho, I do think that it deserves those 7 seasons. But season 5, I don't think is it. And I should say, to be fair, 5 seasons is surprising in this landscape nowadays. I mean, you look at a lot of other animated shows going on nowadays, they barely ever get 3. But I think that this is a detriment in so many different ways, not the least of which is that, especially with the Star Trek show, we get invested in these characters. Like, that's part of the joy of these stories, is wanting to get invested in these characters and get to know them and get to be part of, have them be part of our lives. Like, some Star Trek to me growing up was so important to me because, you know, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Next Generation, they became part of, like, my family in my sense, you know, in a way. And I think that that's, like, a good part of fiction. We shouldn't get, like, so emotionally invested in them we can't let them go, because all things, as I said, should end. But we deserve to have their stories completed. And Lower Decks deserves to have its stories completed. Tendi, Mariner, Boimler, Rutherford, they all deserve to have their stories completed. And honestly, we need more Shaqs, because fighting fascism is a full-time job. So ultimately, like I said, I'm going to do a larger video on my feelings on the state of Star Trek, because there is some positive to look forward to. I mean, we do have this Starfleet Academy show on the horizon. I do have, you know, up and down feelings about Strange New Worlds, but I am excited for its seasons 3 and 4. I've liked a lot of Strange New Worlds overall. And also we have the Section 31 show with Michelle Yeoh also on the horizon, though, again, putting some caveats on that, that was downgraded from an actual series. That was supposed to be an ongoing show, became a movie, so, and Alex Kurtzman has hinted that there's potentially more stuff on the future. The other thing, too, with this, too, I should mention as well, is that, you know, Star Trek Paramount Plus itself was trying to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Trek the Animated Series last year with its very short treks, and, like, saying, oh, animated Star Trek is such an important part of our brand, when, in actuality, they canceled Prodigy that year, and now they're canceling Lower Decks. I mean, like, how do you consider Star Trek to be such, animated Star Trek to be such an important pillar of the franchise? It's just frustrating, because I do think animation is an important pillar of many franchises. I mean, look at Star Wars nowadays. I mean, a lot of the stories that live action Star Wars is pulling from, such as the Ahsoka show, even Mandalorian to a large degree, you know, you can have mixed feelings on that, but those shows are pulling from the animated counterparts. And I honestly feel like the animated parts of franchises are kind of the lifeblood of them. They're what kind of keeps fresh ideas churning, because oftentimes live action shows, just because of the amount of money that they have on screen, tend to play it a little bit safer. But in animation, you can just go hog wild and do whatever you want. I think Prodigy is probably at the foremost of this, as much as I love Lower Decks. But even Lower Decks brings forth a lot of new ideas to Star Trek as well. And so I think you need that in a franchise, to see both these animated shows kind of be put either canceled or on the back burner in Prodigy's case, and sort of like eking by. It just signals to me that there's going to be this endless, potentially nostalgia churn for Star Trek, which I think is a death knell for the franchise, and I don't want that to be the case. So here's what I'm going to say for Lower Decks. There is a way we can hopefully be loud and vocal about Lower Decks, and hopefully try to make our voices at least heard by the people at Paramount. I'm going to put in the description, there is potentially a place you can write letters to Paramount. It's always good to write physical letters, because you can annoy the hell out of them, because then they have to actually open stuff and deal with stuff, so the more letters they get, the better. The other thing that I would say is, you know, a lot of people are like tweeting out on, you know, the artist formerly known as X and all of that stuff, and I think that is helpful, but the best thing you can do is 2 things. 1, go on Paramount Plus and watch the episodes continuously. Seriously, watch more Lower Decks. I've been actually putting it on the background of my television just over and over and over again, letting it run. And then maybe even tweeting about it as well. But the other thing you can do is buy physical media. Seriously. Like, don't watch these episodes yet. Mine's still in its wrapper. But this just came out the other day, a Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4. So I picked it up. I'm going to watch it because I love my audio commentaries as well. But I'm trying to make sure the data gets seen and shown over on Paramount Plus to try to get the show saved. Because I do think that Lower Decks is just a show that deserves to have 2 more seasons. Let's get it 2 more seasons. 2 more seasons and 4 movies, to paraphrase, I guess, Community overall. But yeah, and by the way, if anyone from Lower Decks is watching this, because I know some of you do, just know that I adore you and love you. And regardless of what happens with Lower Decks from here on out, you are all amazing, talented people. You have brought me nothing but joy and kindness in my life. I am so thankful for everything that Lower Decks has done and given to all of us. And hopefully we can get a little bit more as well. But regardless, just thank you to all of you. So let's try and be vocal. Let's try and save this show. And yeah, that's my sort of feelings on that. And hopefully next week I'll get a video out about sort of my larger feelings on the Star Trek franchise as a whole. Because yeah, I have a lot of feelings.